High-level business decisions frequently fail when they are built on unverified intuition. Even visionary leaders like Steve Jobs have confessed to making significant mistakes due to errors of judgment. Richard Branson has admitted to similar failures. Relying on hunches remains a strategic liability, regardless of a founder's previous successes. These individual missteps reflect a systemic corporate issue. Business periodicals frequently feature organizations that face difficulties because we implemented plans before conducting enough foundational research to support them. Scientific research offers a different path. It is defined as an organized, data-based, and objective inquiry into a specific problem that needs a solution. Transitioning from a dangerous guess to a reliable strategy relies on a formalized system of inquiry. Moving from corporate chaos to actionable knowledge is not an accident. It requires a highly structured, strictly mechanical system of systematic investigation. This blueprint identifies the three components of that system: the structural parameters at the base, the central operating engine, and the philosophical environment enclosing the entire structure. These layers are interdependent. If any one of these components is misaligned, the resulting data becomes meaningless noise. We will assemble this machine from the ground up to understand how valid knowledge is generated. Scientific research functions as an engineered mechanism designed to systematically strip away human bias. The chassis of this machine is formed by the 8 hallmarks of scientific research. The first 2 slots are purposiveness, starting with a definitive aim, and rigor, requiring a scrupulous methodological design. Moving along the perimeter, we install parsimony, the preference for building a framework with the fewest variables required. 4 standardizing forces follow: replicability, precision, objectivity, and generalizability, ensuring findings are unbiased and widely applicable. We complete the chassis with testability, ensuring conjectures can be subjected to statistical pressure to see if data supports them. When a research design fails to meet these 8 tolerances, the resulting strategy is likely to fracture under real-world economic pressure. The central mechanism is the 7-step hypothetico-deductive method. Consider a practical scenario. A CIO named Sarah observes that her managers are not using a newly installed information system. She defines a precise problem statement, narrowing the friction to knowledge-related factors. In step 3, she develops a hypothesis, conjecturing that managers with more knowledge of the system's usefulness will put it to greater use. This hypothesis must adhere to a rule introduced by Karl Popper. Popper required a hypothesis to be falsifiable. Because a hypothesis cannot be permanently confirmed, it remains provisional until data is gathered that disproves it. Steps 4 and 5 involve determining the exact mathematical measures for the variables and executing the data collection. Finally, Sarah analyzes the data statistically and interprets the results. In this case, the analysis leads to a recommendation for training seminars and system demonstrations. Even if the data had falsified her hypothesis, the research remains valuable, as it allows for the refinement of the theoretical model. The 7-step method converts vague organizational friction into mathematically verifiable interventions. This engine runs on a continuous feedback loop between 2 distinct types of logic. Inductive reasoning observes specific phenomena, like the lack of system use, to arrive at a general theory. Deductive reasoning takes that theory and narrows it down into testable hypotheses to verify original observations. The educational philosopher John Dewey described this sequence as the double movement of reflective thought. In Dewey's model, the mind first asks, "Why does this happen?" through induction, before systematically testing the proposed answer through deduction. An informal observation, simply noticing that something in your environment isn't working as expected, often serves as the spark that starts this entire investigative cycle. While exploratory studies rely heavily on induction, quantitative causal studies depend on the deductive half of the cycle. Scientific investigation requires both the creativity to observe a phenomenon and the logic to test it. Business research faces a specific challenge. Unlike the natural sciences, it most often measures subjective human constructs, like emotions, motivation, and perceptions. A researcher's approach to these variables is determined by epistemology, the philosophy of what constitutes knowledge and what exists in reality. Epistemology acts as a filter. In the first quadrant, positivism relies on objective truth and cause and effect laws. Constructionism argues the world is mentally constructed, studied through qualitative accounts. Critical realism assumes an objective truth, but uses triangulated methods to counter flawed human measurement. Finally, pragmatism views truth as provisional, focusing on practical research to solve specific problems. A researcher's definition of reality dictates the tools and designs they use before they collect a single piece of data. The final assembly of the insight engine unites these three frameworks. The epistemology calibrates the operating environment, defining the nature of the data. The 7-step hypothetico-deductive method provides the mechanical drive. Finally, the 8 hallmarks form the chassis, ensuring the output is structurally sound. The probability of making wrong decisions is high when businesses solve problems based on hunches and insufficient information. Extracting objective truth from a chaotic organizational environment requires this type of engineered system.